Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. Today, it's my boy Pete and I back at you. So happy Thursday. We're recording this on a Thursday. Happy Thursday, Pete.
Happy Thursday. Excited to have kind of an unorthodox concept sort of deal today.
We do.
So something a little different.
Yeah, we're going a little rogue today. We've been getting a lot of feedback that people really liked our episode about sharing book recommendations. And, we've been upping the number of podcasts we've been doing. So we're like, let's try some new kinds of content. We usually have like a topic around business, but if people like the book stuff so much, today we thought, let's just do a short one on some quotes that we like. And I think this is probably like similar-ish to the book episode, is that these are the places that like we turn for like changing our thinking, finding some inspiration, challenging perspectives. And I think quotes can be like a really powerful tool for that. I'm not one that maybe like looks at a quote every day and uses like a mantra, but I do find quotes can be really succinct. Like, they're the original tweets, right? They're like the really pithy, short ideas that get passed down from generation to generation, because when you hear them, they change something about how you think and how you feel. And so I think quotes is a great theme for today, and we'll probably keep it quick. So I think we're each going to share two, and maybe just talk about them briefly. So why don't you go first, Pete? What's a quote that you love, and maybe just share a little bit about why you love it?
Sure. Well, when you first floated the idea and the quotes I gravitated toward initially, I kind of realized I'm like this sports gym meathead. Because first thing I was the man in the arena quote is awesome.
The truth is revealed finally on this podcast.
Yeah, I went super cliche sports guy. But the more I thought about it, I realized there are certain sayings that I use a lot in coaching conversations, and they originate as quotes typically.
Yeah.
So the first one that I especially like, I believe it was a Henry Clay quote. And he said, "There will come a time when winter will ask you what you've been doing all summer." And this one resonates with me in both a business and a gym client standpoint.
Yeah.
And so I have kind of flipped that quote seasonally to say, there will come a time when summer asks you what you've been doing all winter, because the nature of our client roster is they train hard all winter. And then in theory, they showcase those results on field in the spring and on into the summer. And so that quote just makes sense to me when I'm communicating with young athletes. It's you don't start preparing for the spring sports season on February 1st. You start on September 1, October 1. That's because you got the whole winter to do the work. And that's how I think about it as it relates to how we run this business. But then when I think about it from a business perspective, it speaks to me because it's kind of like the gym owner who comes to me on December 20th and they're like, I think I should run a New Year's special. And I'm like, you know what? You should have been talking about that.
Yes. Both
in staff meetings, internally and externally, for a long time. Like we start promoting our collegiate summer program on December 1st.
Yep.
And we know like what we're going to roll out on that day and how we're going to talk about what the messaging is going to be. If you're talking about initiatives, like you're rolling out concepts or new initiatives for the quarter you're already in, then they've already failed.
Yeah.
I mean, they're just not happening. I remember in 2015 or 16, I went down and did a lecture with you guys that you guys hosted. It was like the Motivation Movement Lab.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So fired up about Snatched in 6 weeks because you guys talked about it.
Yeah.
And I was like, we're going to go home. I'm going to have Nancy run a transformation program. We're going to talk to BPM on, it was probably like Skype back then.
Sure.
And I was like, and we're going to roll it out. And they're like, okay, when are we doing it? And I'm like, screw it. Let's do it like in 3 weeks. And we got like nobody to sign up. And we were just so defeated. And it was just this perfect lesson of like, you can lay these plans down, but if you do it in like a reactive, really quick, hasty sort of way, you're not going to get results. Then you're going to get frustrated. And instead of being like, I'm dumb, I didn't give myself the runway to do this properly, you say, well, the idea was dumb and our clients didn't want it. And that was this moment where I realized the time came where I should have been planning for months, and instead I was trying to do it on no notice. So there will come a time when winter will ask you what you've been doing all summer.
That's a great one. I love that so much. There's so many things about that. I mean, even just speaking of like MFF, we have the Snatch in 6 Weeks program, listeners. That's like a 6-week boot camp we've been doing since 2011. And even that, it's like when people ask us about it, they get shocked that like we start promoting and selling that like 6 or 8 weeks before it starts. Right, the runway for projects like that, if you really want to sell something new, a course, a boot camp, any of those things, a workshop, you got to start way sooner than most people leave themselves time for. So I think it's a great example, Pete. I think the other thing that's a great illustration of is this balancing we're always doing between like our short-term selves and our long-term selves. It's like in the moment, we're constantly kind of putting out fires and checking off small things on our to-do list, all that, instead of doubling down and investing in the things that will really set us up for success 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 6 months down the line. And so I think it's a great quote to remind us to like, yeah, look a little farther out sometimes and stop having such, what's it called? Short-sightedness, right? It's a good one. Cool. I'll share one. This one's actually by John Cage, which actually a lot of people may not know. I know John Cage from my dance background. He was a composer, music theorist. He works a lot with a choreographer. Some people might recognize his name is Merce Cunningham. But anyway, John Cage, really smart guy. And this quote I've been using, I think it's even been my Facebook page for like a decade. And the quote is this. He says, I can't understand why people are frightened of new ideas. I'm frightened of the old ones, right? I can't understand why people are frightened of new ideas. I'm frightened of the old ones. And I find myself in that position all the time. I think as someone who often is promoting and helping people work through change, I get so excited about the new ideas. And frankly, I think more people should be hesitant and questioning the old ideas, right? And we see this play out in businesses all the time. And often their rationale for why they do something in their business is like, oh, we've been doing that way for 10 years. That's always been the way we've done it. Our clients love it that way. We couldn't possibly change it. Our clients love it. And I think, okay, well, I would love for you to be a little more skeptical of those old ideas and a little more curious about the new ones. And I think that kind of energy among leaders also trickles down in the culture, right? If leaders get excited about new ideas, get excited about improvements, get excited about new ways of doing things, like that also, I think, has an impact on how the rest of the team feels about change and questioning old ideas. So anyway, I think that one applies to lots of other areas of your life, but I think that's the one place in business I see it all the time, was just like a set way of doing things, and a real negative reaction to the idea of changing it. And I would love people to flip that around more often. Yeah. What do you hear in that quote?
So I'll give one little kind of follow-up thought, and that is that it's okay to be a little bit resistant to change, because
Sure.
I'm one of those people who struggles a little bit with, say, integrating new technologies in our business, things like that. But it's only okay if you acknowledge it as a weakness and you communicate to your team that sometimes you need to be reminded of that.
Yeah.
So I have team members who will be like, we should do this thing. And I'm like, I don't know about that. And then they're like, yeah, well, you said that about this thing over here. And I don't know if you noticed, but here we are, and it's working. And basically, if I give my colleagues the permission to push back on my kind of like grumpy old man type deal, like the get off my lawn type of management style, then they can usually get me to where I need to be internally. But I'm a person who's just, I love routine.
Yeah.
I love regimen. I love the way it always worked. I just need people to give me the right kick in the pants.
Yeah, well,
so
I want to say...
It doesn't mean it's okay to just never embrace change,
Yeah.
but accept the fact that there are some people like me who need that extra push.
Yeah, well, I want to plus one that, because that is the majority of people. Most people actually don't embrace change out of hand, right? Most people have friction and tension around making any change, and that's normal. Like that is the baseline we're all operating from as humans. And certainly, I should say this, that for many people, that resistance to change in their lives is contextual, right? The context is also often like decisive in terms of how we behave. And so I would say that, and certainly in work cultures, I think it's probably the dominant way of being, right? Resistance to change. Sometimes in other settings and other contexts, that might not be true for people as much, but I think, you're in the majority, even I, who I'm studying change, promote change, help people work through change. There's plenty of areas in my life, certain contexts where changing for me would produce a lot of anxiety. Like I have a lot of routines about how I travel because I get travel anxiety, and those routines help me kind of cope with the unexpected things that come up when I'm traveling. So if I was to change that, there'd be some unexpected thing about how I have to travel, I'd be real fucking stressed out. Like if I have to be in an economy seat out of the blue, I'm probably having lots of anxiety as a first world problem.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, but hey, I guess these are first world conversations.
Yeah, you want to share your second one?
Yeah, absolutely. Might not be a entirely foreign one to people, but I really like the Steve Jobs quote, "It's better to have a hole on your team than to have an asshole on your team." I find myself using that line more and more frequently because, well, for starters, I have tolerated bad attitudes in my business for longer than I should on more than 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 occasions over the years. And internally, I'm always saying to myself, well, we got to push forward and make this work because I don't want to inconvenience the rest of the team by asking them to pick up some additional slack if I have to make a difficult decision and tell somebody it's time to take a walk. And almost in maybe 100% of the time, the ultimate takeaway is the rest of the team saying to me, why did it take so long? Yeah. And I don't practice or I don't execute on this mindset as often as I should, but a bad apple really can ruin the whole batch. And
can I ask you a follow up? Sorry, just a quick call is, and you might not be the same answer, but generally speaking, when you look back at all those choices, and I've made the same choices to keep people around who you knew were creating problems. I won't use the word like toxic, but we're somewhere on the spectrum to not being a great fit. Is there any theme into why you kept them around? What the excuses were that you made for them?
Oh, that's a good question. They rarely deserved excuses. I was doing it selfishly because it was the path of least resistance for me.
Got it.
And I was avoiding difficult conversations. Not that I was afraid of firing someone.
Yep.
Sometimes it was, I'd let somebody with resting bitch face sit at the front desk for months on end because of how difficult it is to hire for that role.
Yeah.
And how much of a wrench it would throw into my own personal life. So selfishly, I retained the asshole on staff in favor, or I say instead of having a hole on the staff. And I regretted it every time.
Yeah.
So
well said.
It's been a while since I've really made that mistake, because oftentimes the people who are trending toward toxic tend to filter themselves out. And honestly, we've talked about this a lot over the years, but in recent years, about how much success I have had in my operation of introducing 2-year contracts with my kind of entry-level staff members.
Yeah.
Because things often don't go bad in that window of time, but you can maybe feel it coming your way, and there was rarely hard feelings or difficult optics to manage when we would let a contract expire and help people find the next job. And so I think I avoided toxicity because of that little guardrail that we built in. So it's kind of like I insulated myself from my own bad habits.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I'm admittedly extraordinarily flawed on this one. I still avoid the difficult conversation, and I think I convince myself that I'm doing a favor to my team when I'm actually doing the opposite.
Yeah. Well said, my friend. I think it's great. I mean, it also just displays an extraordinary amount of self-awareness that you can recognize that in yourself. And the reason I asked the follow-up question is because, I know I often will say what the research says, but I'm going to do that more and more these days. I'm just a nerd, so forgive me. But what the research shows...
You spend too much money on this education not to do it.
What the research shows is the number one reason people keep, I'll call it for shorthand, toxic people in the workplace is the number one excuse we make for them, and this is also often true, and I've had some of this experience myself, is because they're good at their job. right? That's the number.
You're right. I've used
It's
that.
the number one reason why people can stay in their jobs. This is also true for leaders, right? Executives are often kept in their role because they're performing for stakeholders, or people are kept in their jobs because they're so good at it, even though they're making everyone around them miserable. We make excuses for them. Yeah, but they're irreplaceable. They're such a good salesperson. They're irreplaceable. The clients love them. And they're making everyone else effing miserable. So I share that one because that's the number one reason in the research. It's also been my number one excuse for keep people around too long. So yeah, that's my mea culpa.
Yeah, I know I can picture the exact scenario you're talking about, and I have said that. And it wasn't wrong. I mean, these employees were excellent at certain components of their roles.
Yeah, and I think in some cases, I might even dare to say, I think that's maybe an okay choice in some cases, right? Especially in the cases where you can isolate that person from having the negative impact and they also crush in their job, right? I think once in a while that might be an okay version of that, but on a regular basis, that's a terrible pattern.
Sure, you can't scale that.
No. Yeah. Right, is it my turn? So my second one. Yeah,
you got one last, the grand finale.
Yeah, there's so many I want to choose from. I think the one I'm going to go with is one from Brene Brown, just because I'm always representing Brene Brown. I feel like she was one of my books as well. And one of the things that she says, and I've probably said it on this podcast before, is people are hard to hate close up, move in. Right. And I love that idea. Like, people are hard to hate close up, so move in. And I see this play out all the time. Example in business is it's real easy to send that email that tells everyone exactly what you're thinking and never talk about it face to face. Right? It's real easy to be bold in an anonymous feedback survey from employees, or one that your clients send. But it's harder to give that feedback face to face. And so I think it's a really important strategy as managers and leaders, is that when you have difficult information to give, when you have difficult feedback to give, when you have a challenging conversation to have, it is always better to have it face to face. It's always de-escalating to have it face to face. It's really easy for emails to get escalated and escalated and escalated. People just misunderstand each other, vilify each other, dehumanize each other. Same thing with text messages. It's very easy to treat the person on the other end of that message as if they're just not even human. They're just the enemy. They're just the person who you need to destroy, the person you want to win over, right? And there's so much a kind of a power over energy that comes from those kind of communications. But if you can get close up, sit face to face, look each other in the eye, see each other's micro expressions, hear each other's voice, hear the tone in each other's voice and the way you're expressing yourself, read the body language, right? It's hard to hate someone sitting face to face. And, you see this play out. If you ever watch, documentaries of someone embedding themselves in a culture where they don't belong, you'll see everyone's actually pretty nice to them. All right, they actually have pretty civil. I've watched documentaries of a journalist, a black female journalist embedding herself in the KKK to do some reporting. They were real nice to her, right? Within context, right? I'm not saying that it was a positive relationship, but it wasn't as venomous as you might think. It wasn't as venomous as the rhetoric you might find on Facebook, right? So I just love that idea that if you want to de-escalate a potential conflict, or share difficult news, or create more connection, do it face to face, do it close up, and it'll always go better. I'll put always in quotes. It will almost always go better.
That's great. I wish I had that a half hour ago. I needed that line during a coaching call.
Yeah.
And I intend to steal it.
Yeah, it's a great one. And I, all the time I'm telling people, they send me emails to, Unicorn Study members will send me emails of like, hey, I want to tell somebody some information. Can you check this email to make sure I've said it well? I said, you said it well, but you can't send this email. You have to go talk to the person. Get on the phone, get on Zoom, meet face to face. And the reaction I always get is like, oh, really? Do I have to? I'm like, well, if you want this to go well, you do. If you're cool with it just getting escalated and misunderstood, then sure, send the email. Let's see what happens. But if I'm you, I'm going to hedge my bets and just talk face to face.
Yeah, that advice sits really nicely next to the always sleep on it.
Yeah.
Kind of piece of advice for emails like that. But I mean, that's a line that I want to take home and deliver to my boys tonight.
Yeah.
Like I want to, because Colin's at a stage in life where kids are starting to be crummy little human beings to each other on the playground and at camp and things like that. And that is a message that travels across age groups.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I'm stealing it, Michael. That's mine now.
Well, thanks, Brene Brown. It's great. Yeah. Well, thanks for doing this, my friend. I think this was a fun one. We kept it under 20 minutes, so that's great. And so, listeners, if you like more content like this, shoot us an email or comment down below wherever you're taking in this content. My email is michael@businessunicorns.com. You got Pete at businessunicorns.com. Just let us know. What do you want us to talk about on this podcast? What other topics should we cover? But thanks for talking about this today, Pete. I thought this was fun, and I'm taking away both of yours, so it was valuable for me as well.
Good talk. Talk soon.
Hey there, Business for Unicorns podcast listeners. This is Mark, and I'm here to tell you about an awesome free resource on businessforunicorns.com. If you ever find yourself feeling frustrated with your training gym because you know that there are all sorts of things you could work on, but you're not really sure how to prioritize, you don't know what's the most important thing to work on or what order you should be tackling your priorities, well, now is the time to go to businessforunicorns.com, click the button, and fill out our free self-assessment. With the Ultimate Training Gym Owner Report Card, you will gain immediate clarity on just where to be focusing your attention to create more positive impact on your community, to drive more revenue and take-home income, and to do it all with less stress and more peace of mind. So go to businessforunicorns.com, click the button, fill out that free self-assessment, and start building a business and life you love today.